Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How are you today, Nick?
Well, our absolutely brilliant guest just gave us a sneak preview of what we're about to hear. So I'm actually very, very good today. How are you?
I'm exceptional. And it's exactly because of the same reason that you're exceptional, because our guest is none other than the amazing Dr. Sabba Quidwai, whose career began where it matters most, in my opinion, in our opinion, in the classroom. She was a high school social science teacher, and then from there, she went on to lead innovation at USC, was recruited as an education executive at Apple, and is now the CEO and founder of Designing Schools, as well as lecturer at the University of California, Irvine. She's the author of Designing Schools, How Design Thinking Makes You Irreplaceable in the Age of AI. That is a tremendously important conversation to be having, especially at this moment. She's also the host of Designing Schools podcast and the creator of a documentary that explores what genuine innovation in schools actually looks like. She has keynoted some of the most forward-thinking education conferences in the world. So much to dig into. Dr. Quidwai, welcome to State of Ed.
Oh my God, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's our absolute pleasure. So let's pick up on the conversation that we started to have right before we recorded, and it was getting so good, and I promised that I would hit record because people need to hear your thoughts on this topic. So I started just by saying to Dr. Quidwai how she is both my favorite and perhaps least favorite person in the world right now because of all the work that she's done talking about Claude on her social channels. And I have gone from ChatGPT to Claude, but the paid version where I get co-work and code. And now I feel like I have been awakened, unleashed, untethered from whatever was holding me back before and like creating at this crazy scale. But at the same time, as Dr. Quidwai was saying, and I'll let her finish the thought, that can be a double-edged sword. So let's jump into the conversation right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's just give like a little bit of a zoomed out premise for like why, for some of the things that we'll probably talk about today and share. When it comes to using AI, we always say one of the biggest mindset shifts people have to make is that this is not a tool. This is like a teammate, and not just one teammate. The analogy we've been giving lately is it's almost like you've got company A here, company B here, and now you've merged. And each of these companies has different types of workers. You got the human workers in this company, you got the AI agents in this company. And when you merge them together, you need a system. You need shared norms and values. You need shared expectations. Like there has to be like vision for how we're all going to work together. Otherwise, you've basically got a group of freelancers coming together in that way. So I think that context is really important for not just understanding the benefits of Claude, but also being able to understand why people are having such a great time building and creating when the system is designed to support people. Because I think there's a lot of lessons we can take back to our own systems for why thinking about that foundational layer is really important. So one of the things that I think really differentiates Claude that we were talking about from, say, ChatGPT, Gemini, and these other platforms is that they've always had one singular vision, and that is how do we provide value to enterprise businesses, right? It's always been a very single focus. So one, I think it's a real testament to staying true to your vision, even if you're not the most popular in the beginning. And because they've been true to that vision of a system to help businesses generate value versus like wanting engagement and, stay on here, platform the longest and things like that, they've created a system where you can go in and basically build this company that has now merged together, right? They've got the elements in place where you don't have to do a lot of that sort of foundational work. And one of the biggest things they've created is something called skills. And while, yes, you can create a GPT and ChatGPT or a Gem and Gemini and do a bunch of other things, what makes the skills concept so unique is Claude knows when to pull those different skills. So if you think about like all of us, speaking, writing, any of the things that are a skill, let's just go with writing. I use my skill of writing for a birthday card, for a Instagram caption, for a blog post, for so many different things, yet that I'm using that skill contextually. So the fact that you can go in and tell Claude, okay, this is my writing style, this is who I am, this is what I do, and it can contextually not just use a skill, but also stack multiple skills together is something that is really, I think, unleashing a new era of building for people. And that's just really the tip of the iceberg, right? It's able to connect their applications. It's able to do things, right? Which is that whole concept of agency. But because it can do things, you can do things with it. And I just think
Right.
I think it's like, I forget exactly what it is that Andrej Karpathy tweeted, but I think, and this is, remember, the most forward thinking, like this is the person who like is the almost like the creme de la creme of using these tools and building them. He was like it's almost unhealthy that we just want to keep learning, building. But I think on some level, it's a real testament to how deprived we are of building and creating. And now that we've got it, it's almost like just this, what do you call it? Like an adrenaline boost that we don't want to let go of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very much an adrenaline boost. Like unhealthy to some degree for me, just speaking
All
about
of it.
me.
It just again reminds us that at our core, we love building and we love creating. And when we give people the system and when we create the conditions, right, for people to learn, to build, to do these things, they will skyrocket and flourish on their own. Like Anthropic's not holding everybody's hand and bringing them over. People are getting in there,
Right.
they're figuring it out, they're learning as they go, they're doing all the things that make great teaching and learning, but it's because they created really great conditions that allow people to do that.
So can you talk about that and the parallel to education? Because isn't creating the right conditions sort of the secret sauce to being a great educator?
Yeah, isn't it? Was it Piaget? Like who said that? Like the educator's role is to create the conditions for learning. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said it. I think it was Piaget. I can't remember. But that really is the heart and center of what we do, right? Like you're supposed to create the conditions for people to explore, to use their strengths, to discover new things. And when you create those conditions, that happens. So in Claude, for example, you don't even need to know how to build a skill. Like even like there's obviously to more technical ways to build better skills. I think it's also really exciting to see people learning and sharing. Oh my God, I built a skill that did this. Here, go use this. Oh, I built a skill to do this. Go use this. And it's that same concept of like when you're working together in a team, I have this strength, you have this strength. When we get together, we're like better together and we can do more powerful things. And so, at a baseline, you can go into Claude and be like, hey, like make me a skill on da 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 da, like on how to write a great caption or how to write a great lesson plan and whatnot. But the more you bring to that equation, the better the skill and the more personalized the skill is going to be. So I think people are learning this over time. But I think there's this beautiful culture of like learning to learn independently because the conditions are easy. It's an easy platform to build. And I think also the sharing of learning and knowledge with people online it's just a testament to what humans do best. We learn, we share, we create, we build. And I think when you do that, you're reminded that like AI is just like an amplifier of all these pieces.
To Claude, I'm not a Claude user yet. So to hear
Give me like 48 more hours, Dr. Kidwai. I'll have him. His credit card will be in Anthropic's register of credit cards.
Do not misinterpret that as any negativity at all. It's just that I've been hearing Marc only talk about Claude for the last 3 weeks. He hasn't talked about anything else. So now to hear somebody else who has that level of passion for it, it's just
But she's the inspiration for that. You should know, and and we had already planned this podcast. It just happened to kind of work out organically like that. Like he texted me about the Duke UConn game, and I had no idea that Duke and UConn were even playing. Under normal circumstances, my pre-Claude life, I would not only know that they were playing, but I would have been watching the game. And it turned out to be one of like the greatest games in the history of college basketball. I missed it because Claude and I were on a date, essentially.
I think we should point out though that like, because I think it's easy when we like say, oh, use this and whatnot. Like a lot of times we're using it in the context of our personal lives and whatnot. I do think it's important for people to remember that like FERPA, COPA, all these different things. So at the end of the day, what I think I wrote the other day, how I thought it was just such an injustice that K-12 education in particular did not just have full license to this. And I think it's one of those things where if you like really want to prepare your next generation, like you need to be giving schools access to these tools because Claude is expensive. And when you think about how most people are barely willing to pay $20 a month for like back ChatGPT or in this case, even Claude, there's no way people are paying $100 a month, which I think you do need if you're going to really integrate this into your workflows. There's no way people are paying that. There's just no way, which means only a fraction of your population now has access to this knowledge and to this learning. And I think this is what actually motivated me to share more, because we kind of moved away from sharing tools and things like that, especially if they weren't tools that could be used within education. But the reason I double down, I have even more coming on this, is you have to see what's possible to understand the
Right.
urgency of how to prepare this next generation.
So can you talk a little bit about like using the word irreplaceable in the title of that's your most recent book,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really just idea. I think, these days, I think we're still seeing so many people who are so afraid of AI replacing them. And I think there's a lot of things to be afraid of with AI. So like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot to be skeptical of. There's a lot of concerns to have. Well, one of the concerns that I think that is a little bit misguided is it's just going to replace everybody. And I think there's two ways we like to reframe this for both adults and for kids when we think about being irreplaceable. For adults, I think it's very much this idea that like we are not living to our full potential at all. We are barely probably at 10% of who we are and what we're truly capable of doing. The fact that a machine even makes us feel that way is a signal we're not doing the work we're meant to do, right? We weren't born to like
Mm.
type all day long. Like, even I think if you zoom out historically, it really is only in the last maybe like 100 years or so that we've had these kind of cubicle desk type jobs. Otherwise, prior to that, society has always been very relational, right? Like farms or people together, like one room schoolhouse. Like, it's always been very relational. This segment everybody up, whether it's a factory, whether it's an office or school, is relatively new for humans. And so it's a very unnatural way. Like I always say, it's fascinating. We like have desks, but we want people on them and then treadmills underneath to try to get your almost just like trying to like re-engineer a lot of things that are inherently natural to who we are. So I think this is really an opportunity to one, realize, okay, wait, I'm meant for more than making slide decks all day long and things like that. And I think once you have
Right.
that realization, then the next step is like, yeah, what does energize me? That's why I always like to share one of my favorite assessments. It's called the Spark type, and it's completely free. But even being able to answer that question, what energizes me, when you haven't done that work in a really long time, you're like, I don't know. So that assessment is really, really helpful for giving you some language around what energizes you. And so it's the beginning of like this journey into like what you prefer doing, what your strengths are, what do you wish you could spend more time on? And everyone has an answer to that question, which doesn't always mean more work, right? It can mean a multitude of different things. So I think that's like the one piece of it there. And then for young people, we also hear that as well, right? Entry level jobs are going away, this and that. And for
Yeah.
them, we like to reframe by saying, yes, they're going away because you've got this another group of people that are coming in and getting hired for those entry level positions. But basically, what that means is as a human, everyone just got a promotion. Like everyone just became a leader overnight. Whereas that maybe was something you had to work your way up to. Only a few people were in those roles. Whether you're like 17, or 70, every single person just became a leader of this technology. And so when you again reframe that, you start to think differently about the skills that people need, about the types of experiences they need.
Right. Right.
And so, yes, jobs are going to go away. Like, yeah, things are going to be replaced, but like, it's not, they're changing. And I think this is why Claude is really important, because it shows you very quickly what this change looks like. Because unlike some of the other tools that, just want you to like engage more and whatnot, Claude pushes back. I respectfully disagree. And this is without any training whatsoever. It always has questions it wants to ask you to think more deeply about things. But when you watch an AI tool, one of my favorite automations that I did with Claude, and this is just with cowork, so not even code, you can connect it to multiple platforms, right? So I have like my iPhone, and one of the things I do is like I'm always coming across like research reports or things I want to share with people, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go back and do a post on that, and of course I never do. So I have this folder now on my phone where all I have to do is share a PDF to that folder when I see a report or an article. And because with iCloud Drive, it syncs to my Mac. So I have this thing set up where every evening Claude goes into that folder and it creates carousels and one video script for me on that article or on that topic. But it's being trained in my voice, in the types of information I like to pull out. It's got a history of all of my other previous posts. And so it's like unreal now for me to open my computer in the evening and like everything's ready for me there to just go plug and post. And I'm in the process of just doing some quality control. But once I'm happy with it, I'm not even in the equation anymore. It's going to go straight to ClickUp, which is where we manage our software, like our posts and project management. And my assistant gets a notification that this is what we want to post tomorrow. When you watch yourself removed from that equation, it's very easy to be like, oh, my copyright is going to be replaced. My assistant's going to be replaced. What am I going to do? but it just frees me up to one, spread more ideas, be more present with ideas, and not have to be stuck at a desk.
Are you aware
Yes,
of
you're
all that, Mark?
describing
Because that's
not to the degree that Dr. Kidwai is, but I'm getting there. And this is part of the obsession, but it's like a fun obsession, like you mentioned before, like feeling alive and energetic. And I really do in so many ways because I'm a very creative person and I always have been. And the obstacle that I always ran into and the friction that I always experienced was like time and energy and everything else. And plus, I do work for a living. And so that's also important. What this is doing is taking the friction away between my idea and the implementation and execution of my idea.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. That one thing alone is forget about all the connecting. I mean, I just learned how to connect Claude to different applications and just watching it literally interact with my hard drive and everything else. And I'm sure I'm going to wind up regretting that one day when the robots take over the world. But like for right now, it's a lot of fun because it's all the steps that I would have to take, which is all stuff that I can do, but it's just compressed the amount of time that it takes to get from A to B. And that gives me more time to have another idea or to come up with and share another thing. That's why it's so exciting for me and liberating at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
so.
But you had mentioned before, like if you're 7 or 17 or 70. Now, yeah, as educators, one of the challenges, of course, is like when you're 70, you have had an opportunity to develop all the tools and all the wisdom and analytical and cognitive skills to be able to really leverage the technology. I think the real challenge of the day is how do we do that and impart that kind of skill ability to the 7-year-old and the 17-year-old so they can make the most of leveraging the technology when they get into I'll quote unquote the real world or the working world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a really, really, really hard question to which the answer is also really contextual because it totally depends on the people around you and how they approach teaching and learning. So I'm very hesitant on students to give such a blanket answer unless I like really know your context and your situation and we can tailor design something for you. But I'll tell you kind of my overarching philosophy based on my experience with my niece and nephew because I spend so much time with them. So my nephew is 7 and my niece is 3. And I will tell you, the only AI tool I am comfortable exploring with them is Canva for a couple of reasons. And it's actually what you just said. I have an idea and now I can build it. And ultimately, at the core of that feeling is agency. And when you are a young person, this is Sir Ken Robinson's, right? Like we kill creativity. And essentially, what he was
Yes.
with that is we kill agency. And you notice if you spend any time with a child under like what I think they say the official cutoff is like what the data shows is like 3rd grade, you start to see that drop, right? So let's just take like kindergarten, 1st grade, or anyone younger. They are so high agency, constantly asking why, really, really curious, intuition as well to a large degree that they may not be able to articulate always, but is there, always wanting to create something, build something, and do something. And I think there's something so powerful about having an idea and showing them in the moment, okay, say your idea to the computer and let it make it for you. So again,
Mm.
you are that director. Like you have an idea and the computer is going to work for you, right? What do you want the computer to do? What do you not want it to do? What did it do well? What did it not do well? These are all conversations we can have both with and without technology as well, right? So the Canva right now is the only one where I'm like, absolutely 100%. It's just going to increase and enhance what's possible and build your creativity. After that, I think, we can actually maybe even now look from 2022 November when it first came out to now where we are in 2026. Okay. So if you were to think about, say, somebody who was either in high school or in college, within the last 4 years, what are some of the most important skills we think they should have learned when using AI? Being able to simply talk to a chatbot probably isn't one of them. At the
Right.
top list would probably be decision making. How do you use a tool well? How do you know when to use it, when not to use it? Again, things you can do with and without technology. I think another thing that AI companies are very clear on is that they want to build agency within these tools. The reason they're called AI agents, I looked this up because I was like, why is the company so dumb calling it something so scary that sounds like the CIA when people technology. I was like, who named this? And when I started learning, the reason they call them AI agents is because it comes from the word agency. And it's because they
Oh, I
don't
didn't know that.
Yeah, neither did I. And it's because they want them. The ultimate goal is for them to act and do things. So I'll take this again back to Claude, which I don't know, in my opinion, like how much more do you want? Like those things are doing things. Like now the differentiator is how well do you know how to direct it? How well do you know
Right.
how to control and guide and direct that technology, which a lot of times, literally, you could not even be using it. You might have somebody else, but can you verbalize and articulate what you want, what you don't want, and how something is going to run? So I think this decision-making, articulation, agency, and how we create that confidence within people, especially young people, will likely be what will make or break you tomorrow, because we have no idea
Mm.
kind of how things evolve. But one thing we can say with certainty throughout history is, I always say like Elon Musk didn't grow up driving a Tesla and like Steve Jobs wasn't using an iPhone growing up, but they all have something in common. And that is curiosity, like resilience, and like this persistence to build and to create something that they think matters. That's agency. I believe I can build something and I'm going to go off and do it. And this is how I'm going to go about doing that. And so I think the more you understand that about yourself and like understand how you learn so that you can keep up with things independently and not be dependent on somebody else for your learning, is what we'll do. That's why Elon Musk, I mean, I know a lot of people don't like him, but like, both him and Steve Jobs have this in common, how much they read across multiple
Right.
disciplines and things like that. So I think there's just so many things we can do without technology. And these days in particular, like we saw it a lot with iPads, but like I think it's really important for like the industry to acknowledge how much backlash we're seeing right now against technology. And in my opinion, like rightfully so. Like, and
Mm.
it sucks so much because anyone who's had a chance to use it well knows how life-changing it can be. Like obviously, I wouldn't even have anything that I have today if it wasn't for an iPad. It changed my world, not only changed my world, but gave me access to every opportunity that I have today. However, maybe only 10% of schools integrate it in this way. Mostly it is a substitution type tool. So for that reason, I think if it's not used well, you may be better off without it than you are with it. I don't know. It's something it's so contextual, but it's something I constantly struggle with.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, I'm very curious because I agree with you that we are at this point where the pendulum seems to be creeping back the other way.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are as to, why and what that looks like.
Yeah, because I think it's because of what I see in a lot of places. Like I think it's great that kids have access to tools that give them feedback and this and that. But I think if it's not contextualized in a way where you're learning agency and it's not contextualized as part of a project or it's not contextualized as something bigger. And it's just, oh, you're going to get feedback on your essay from this little chat bot and it's going to help you write this a little bit better. I just don't know how well that serves you because I meet a lot of people who can write essays. They can't verbalize their ideas. And I think this is a really hard thing for people to even wrap their heads around now. I barely have even said this out loud, but because people are still so tied to writing and typing, but I think voice is about to become, it is a really big differentiator. Most people who use their AI tools are not using typing. It's too restrictive. They're speaking, they're verbalizing. And this is something that you can do, when you're 3. Right? Like this is something you were born doing is speaking. And I find in a lot of places, most people really struggle to verbalize their ideas, to speak their ideas. And so I don't know. I just think there's something to be said for do you need to use the actual technology that exists today is not what our kids will be using. So I think we have to be able
Mhm.
to read more from, I think this is what really helps. Every single AI company tells you exactly what they're building and exactly what their vision for the future is. And they are achieving that future faster than their own timelines. So there's very much this notion sometimes we don't know what's coming. We don't know what's there. At the baseline, even if you just realize these companies are building AI tools for agency, the number one thing you should be saying is, well, how do we increase human agency? Because AI agency
Right.
is on the rise, right? These AI companies are bragging about how
Right.
agentic their tools are. Whereas if you look
Right.
at the data on humans, it's down, 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 down. Humans is going down, right? Like Brookings did a really good report on this, the disengagement gap. Agency in humans is down, agency in AI is up. That to me is the problem to solve for. How you solve for that is contextual, depends on your scenario and your people and who you have. But it is the number one thing we say. We do not have a critical thinking problem. We have an agency problem. And I think if you can give and solve for human agency, I think a lot of other pieces fall together on their own. Yeah.
You're giving us a lot to think about.
Yeah. I think more adults need to spend time in these conversations, which I think is hard when you have so many vendors coming at you, giving you solutions that I mean, Claude just came out with that study, right? That like when you see something from AI that's like that looks really good, you are less likely to question it. And I think a lot of these
Mm.
schools and education spaces, you're going to people who are very burnt out, who are frustrated by so many things, and you're giving them this like shiny object that looks so great. The research tells us now we're not as inclined to question what's in front of us. But I do think you can reflect back now and look at 2023 and decisions that were made and be like, crap, we should have thought differently in 2026. Why did we make that choice? Was the information available? The answer is yes. And where do we seek out information about the future as we make choices for children?
There's so many questions, obviously, I could ask based on your extensive knowledge here, but I was gonna ask you, have you encountered any schools that you feel are really approaching AI the right way? Or
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorites, and this is, I'll tell you also the criteria I look for when I look for these things. I look for history. Who were people that were doing things before ChatGPT, right? So one of my absolute favorite people is Steve Bambury. He's based in Dubai at Jumeirah English Speaking School, which is a British international school. And if you follow him, it's like the creativity, the ideas, the way he's thinking about AI integration, especially for students is really, really, really inspiring. But this is a person who's like won awards for technology integration over the past decade. Like his work with iPads was really inspiring. Like his work with AR and VR was really inspiring. And now the same here. So the people who understand, I think, good pedagogy apply it well to every iteration of technology. Another really great example, and this is the one I'm probably like the most proud of, is Desert Sands Unified, because they have such a they have a team who understands technology and curriculum. Their superintendent used to be a CIO. Their chief innovation officer, like, just really understands great team building and just technology and education. They both understand technology and education and this intersection. And they were the first to introduce a decision making framework for using AI. When every single person was giving kids traffic lights and Magic School, they hit pause and were like, we're going to build a more human centered environment. So they call it like, how will you rise to the occasion? And it's 4 questions for every single stakeholder in the organization. Because this is not just about teaching and learning. We all have to learn how to make decisions when using the technology. And it's respect, empathy, integrity, and support. And it's just basically a 4 question checklist before using AI. Are you using it in the right way? Are you making the right decision? And this is just a quick, like, gut check for like being able to be like, oh yeah, I should have done that. Oh, I missed this. Oh, this. And that decision making framework has become such a strong foundation, both in shared language for how we use AI, but also giving every single person a tool to amplify human agency. There's when you the thing problem I have with the traffic lights, just as somebody who is high agency and is that rebel kid, and you say you may do this, you've automatically got me thinking I don't want to listen to you. And so I just think that creates more of a culture of compliance, and it doesn't help people build their independent thinking skills. There's no traffic lights at home when kids get bombarded by social media, AI.
Regrettably.
There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. So like it's very much a academic tool, not a safety tool, not a high agency tool or anything along those lines. So that's kind of like where we see it like right now. Though those are some of the places where we see really great things happening. There's so many other places, another one, community district. I call them out in particular because they're very specifically in 912. So working through some of the challenges the English department had and whatnot. But I'll tell you what all of these places have in common, because people will always ask me, what do you see when you go to all these schools? And across the globe, there is one consistency, and that is a strong leader with a strong vision who's not afraid to make certain choices. And I think that's a really hard thing because you worry about making the wrong choice. But I think when you lean on the research and you lean on history, you can make decisions with about 80% confidence that this is where it's going to be. And the other 20% you can finesse for along the way. So this is the one thing I see in common. The person at the very, very, very top is saying the message is coming from them.
that's a fantastic answer. And love that you're able to identify specific individuals and schools that are doing it the right way. Of course, now the goal is how can we get everybody on board, because students shouldn't just benefit from, those experiences. Every
Yeah.
kid in every school needs to be prepared better for this. Now I'm going to look all those people up, by the way, because I didn't know any of them.
Yeah, I've got to mention one more. It's Robert Dixon over at Wichita. And now I'm going to keep going because I keep remembering, oh, this person, this person, this person. I love about what he's done. He's also built out some really great micro schools. And what's really great about that is it's like showing how you can build different models within a district. He just has such a thoughtful, again, this is another thing you see. These are people who understand education and technology. A lot of times these two departments are siloed in most places. And so that's where a lot of friction comes from. But when you get people who understand both or just are different groups of people coming together from those two lenses, you see a very different approach being put out. But what the work that Rob is doing in Wichita is really, really, really inspiring.
Wow.
So where does the Venn diagram overlap for those two groups or entities?
Yeah, I think it's usually IT and curriculum. Like everybody kind of has a different name sometimes for those departments. But you get sometimes the IT people who are like, well, this is an education problem, a curriculum problem. It's not our problem. And you get the curriculum people saying, well, this is the IT is not doing XYZ and we need this,
Right.
this.
So you need like a Reese's peanut butter cup situation where, right. Right. So, but what is that Venn diagram? Like, where does that overlap? Like for the folks who get it right and can see it well and hit it right down the fairway, what are they seeing that perhaps the two that are in silos are not?
I think the one thing that those people see is, I'll tell you the quality maybe that is there is that they're active learners. They're reading,
Hmm.
they are aware, they're connecting with things. So for example, like Rob has like an entire OpenClaw ecosystem that I haven't heard or seen anyone in education do. Like he has it up and running. So that personal experience of his using an AI like running multiple agents to do all these things is giving him a totally different lens for how to think about what kids need versus the person who's just opening up a new chat every time and saying, write this for me, help me with this, do this. That is a night and day experience that's going to shape how you make choices and decisions for whatever programs or strategies it is that you're coming up with. So I would say, I don't know that it's a certain thing that brings people together, but I'd say the thing that those people all share is that they're actively learning.
Like an intellectual curiosity
Yeah,
and a drive to.
that's the word.
Can you take us through a little bit about your own experience and your journey to kind of get where you are now? You spent some time as an education executive at Apple, and that company, probably one of the most famous examples of design thinking in the world. They literally changed the world with their platforms and their vision and innovation. So, what did you learn there that you don't think perhaps school leaders have internalized yet, like en masse?
That's so funny. I was thinking about that today because their 50th anniversary. And I think, it's so funny. They always had that phrase like think different.
Hmm.
That's the thing. I like one of the things, I don't know that I would say this is something somebody has or not, but I'll just say like what I learned from being there is I think you just learn humility on a scale that like is really hard to, I think, maybe learn in other spaces because when you get hired at Apple, you don't ever really feel like you belong there. You're just constantly yeah, and I think this is true even, like, prior to joining Apple, like, even when you're around, like, Apple distinguished educators, like, I actually always tell people, if you really want some great examples about how to use technology and what you can do, like, even just, like, without AI, but the skills that you need to thrive in a world with AI, go find any Apple distinguished educator and look at what they're doing in their classrooms. Because Apple distinguished educators and Apple distinguished schools have really redefined what teaching and learning look like in many, many ways. And that's kind of like when you hear things like process over product and blah, 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 like these are such old terms. Like these are not new ideas in any way, shape, or form. But if you adopted iPads, I think specifically, you really made a lot of those changes. So when I think I was actually thinking about this today, was like, it's really humility. You never feel like you're good enough when you're there because you're just constantly surrounded by brilliance. And so it always makes you like stay at the top of your game. You're always thinking differently. You're always asking more questions than you are making assumptions. You really strive to just like learn from anyone and everyone around you. And you're just so inspired by like what's being built and how I think you like contribute to that legacy and how you contribute to getting that into more people's hands and helping more people see what can happen when you think different and why creativity is such an important human quality. Like, again, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, whether it's making something with GarageBand or whether it's making something with iMovie, like the idea that we can just like even do these things today, the podcast that we're creating, these were unimaginable when we were growing up, unless you had access and money and resources. So it's just so powerful to like have that responsibility. And I think that responsibility really gives you a deep level of humility for what you need to be able to help other people with.
I think it goes back to what you said about the common trait of all those school districts is that they have to have leaders who I guess who don't think they know all the answers. It's
Yeah.
okay. You have to I think you have to rely on your team and put the right people in place. And when you're talking about Apple, I could imagine, look, I'm sure everybody that's hired at Apple is incredibly intelligent, and you're surrounded by all these, you know, brilliant people. And you're right, it is a little bit maybe humbling. Like, okay, I'm used to being. I have to assume you were like one of the smartest kids in your school in high school. I'd be shocked.
I wasn't at all.
Really?
Yeah, I wasn't at all. But you know what I would say? Like, because I think for leaders today, one of the things that I think is really like hard is we live in a world today where there's 50 other distractions they have to be thinking about. Not every leader can hit
Mm.
pause and be like, oh, I'm just gonna like look at AI all day. Like that's it's
Right.
it's so like we have things like, just like we have so much political, economic, like safety, all of these different things that are at risk for so many people. That I think this is what I actually think conferences and vendors have a more important role to play here because when a leader is taking out time to come to your event to learn from you, if you're just going to throw a bunch of vendors at them, this is actually to me where the breakdown happens. They're trusting you. They're coming,
Mm.
they don't know, and they're coming in to learn. So they're all in one space. They're able to get what they know.
Mm.
But when it's filled with a bunch of vendors who are just selling at you, that's not learning. And so I think if we were to remove that layer, but then you can't remove that layer because you need them there to fund those things. So you have a bunch of interests at hand at a place where a lot of people are coming in very vulnerable and very like, sponges to be able to absorb, well, I'm coming here, they must know what's right. So I'm just going to do this. Right. So I think it's really, really hard today to be a leader with all the competing things for your attention that you have to focus on. And not even just to mention the politics within organizations. Boards are probably the biggest problem for most leaders than anything else, right? So you can't even give people that kind of comfort and support always within the organization, let alone all the outside factors. So I think so much respect and admiration for anybody in those roles right now because it cannot be easy. But to go back to your question, I think so. I always say I've had a lot of really great roles, but the one that influences the work that I do every day is my own experience as a student. Cause I actually dropped out of high school because it was so awful and it was so like literally like, and I would never have been able to express it back then, but really it was because it was people taking your agency away and your ability to make decisions
Mm.
and to do things. So I actually grew up in London. And in London, I always say I moved here when I was 10, so I can't be so specific about what I liked and disliked, but I loved learning. This was one thing that was for sure. I loved learning and I was really good at school. And when we moved to America, it was very different, very, very, very different. And like my academics just went down the drain just because of like how things were taught, what it was. But the biggest thing I lost was math. And even though I knew how to like get by and do the things I needed to do, so I was like, even when I went to high school, then like AP, IB, all the things. But I remember when I was in like this like APIB US history class and the teacher was just like at a podium, literally just like zoning, like just like lecturing away like a robot. At the same time, somebody told me you can take an exit exam and go to community college. They're like, oh, you can leave if you want. You just have to take
Mm.
this test. It's really easy. Like a fifth grader could pass the test. It's so easy. And you just take the test and you literally can leave and you can go to community college. And so I did. And when I got to community college, like, I used to like browse that catalog like Amazon. You could choose your own class. And I took everything from like theater arts to HTML to sewing to fencing, like you name it, and I took it. Like it was just so much fun to just design my own learning and do all those things. And I actually attribute, and that's when I feel like I got back into like a lot of things.
Mm. Mhm.
Attribute a lot of what I can do today actually to my community college experience because it's where I learned about my passion for the social sciences and it's ultimately what got me onto the path that I'm on today. So I think that's why I really believe in agency, but I also attribute, and I have no data or anything for this, But I also cheated a lot in high school. So like, I think that's where a lot of it's fun for like, I guess just like empathy for kids who are struggling in that way.
Right.
I do think when you're younger, agency manifests as bad behavior. We need to fix you. You need to get in line. You can't do this.
Right.
Because we don't know always how to help kids guide and navigate how they, I guess, like how they like, express their agency, we get stuck because we need everybody doing the same thing in the same way at the same time. And so the two are in conflict. And so I think that's why you hear a lot of people who maybe are more entrepreneurial and are doing those things today are not really the people that did well in school. Because I actually think sometimes doing well in school will take that away from you more than
Yeah.
within you. So I actually attribute a lot of my ability to do what I do today because I said no to a lot of assignments, because I didn't do a lot of those standardized things. And I think today I don't have that same mental model maybe that I would have if I had been that like straight A, da 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 type person.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am somebody that's like when you're describing your AP teacher, that breaks my heart because that was the class I taught the most in my career. And I can promise you, I did not lecture from a podium. I can promise you that. But I know that there are so many students who they feel trapped in school, and it's heartbreaking, and it's a struggle, and it's the number one failure of our schools. And I'm never surprised when I encounter somebody. I talk about it all the time. People that are so successful, so brilliant, they were hated school, whatever, but not you. Like you, like I'm shocked that you even were not, the valedictorian, because you're just enormously impressive.
No,
Really, you speak with such passion, such enthusiasm, such knowledge, and such clarity. So it's really, it's remarkable. And I'm glad that community college was like the springboard for you. That's really wonderful because kids need to hear that.
yeah.
The community, the community college route is available to everyone, and it really is a great pathway for so many kids. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially for exploration. You can't go to like a really expensive school and be like, oh, I want to take this class too and this class too. You just can't explore
Right.
that kind of way because it's so expensive. But at a community college, you can, and you can do it from like, I think like, I don't know how old you have to be able to start, but you can do it in high school. So I think I love seeing schools that have the dual pathways that partner with them. And that also you'll hear so many kids say, oh my God, it's so different learning in college than it is in high school. So I think they get like a little feel for that. And I think it motivates people. I think it shows people like there's other ways to learn.
Right.
I think what you're describing in part is one of the areas where we have difficulty in the system is that even like in the later elementary grades, teachers have so much pressure to bring up ELA and math scores that a lot of the other curriculum gets pushed off, to the side. And by the way, the three of us are all history people. Just I don't know if you knew that. So,
Oh,
which is perhaps why we're all getting along well in this conversation. So when all that gets crowded out, like sometimes that's exactly what kids or learners need to keep their enthusiasm and excitement in. So everything gets almost like sterilized and just becomes through a ELA bucket or a math bucket with an occasional like project here or a day here for something else, or a push in. And I think we lose a lot of the exploration, and then that problem only gets magnified as they start to move through the system, and then only maybe if they get to like, the upper years of high school and secondary level, can they start bringing electives back in? But for a lot of students, it's already too late. The fire has gone out. So, I mean, your story just like connects to all of that and brings all of that back in. And this is where I guess we can bring technology and AI back into the conversation. Like we actually have opportunities now to bring the greatest amount of exploration we've ever been able to bring into the classroom. Like that goes to what you were saying earlier. We have to work very hard to avoid the substitution and really lean into the innovation and creativity. And Nick and I were at, and I think you were there as well, FETC, which is actually where we met for the first time. And in one of these really amazing presentations of people who were just brilliant with the technology, and Nick, you can vouch for this, when they mentioned that, I forget if it was Magic School or Magic AI or one of the platforms was pushing directly into Kahoot, like with the click of a button, it got the loudest cheer of the entire 3-day conference. And not that that's not a good thing, because I understand the value there and so on, but it almost like gave me pause because this is what's being celebrated the most of all of the things.
Yeah.
Is just sort of like how easy it is now to just create a Kahoot. Not that Kahoot doesn't have value, but like that means that we're not really focused in on perhaps what needs to get the most attention. Does that make sense? Do you
Yeah.
experience that at all?
And I think we can connect that full circle back to what we started with Claude skills in the beginning. Because even when people create gems or GPTs or skills, a lot of times people are just doing what they already do, right? That's why the whole like act like an expert and give me this and da da da. But one of the greatest opportunities we have when building gems, when building skills, is not just to do it how you would do it, but to do it how you wished you could do it. Like, how do you create a teammate or a gem, like multiple teammates, multiple skills that don't just do what you do and how you do it based off of your samples, but they do it off of the samples of the top 1%, right? So if we do have, which we have tons of exemplars in research for what we know makes for great environments, so all the things, like we
Right.
know what we need to do, it's just really hard to do it. But if you can
Right.
train a teammate to be trained in ELA, to be trained in math, but also project-based learning, and merge all of that together and support you, like, here's what I currently do, help me make this in a way that can merge it. It can be life-changing for so many people in so many ways. And so I think building it back to why people get excited about Claude and building, and it's that possibility that people are seeing.
I see it.
I see it.
For sure. As a matter of fact, I mean, because now my Instagram and TikTok feed is just, I get hit with Claude. Like you can't
I
even imagine.
know.
Well, you can imagine. And there was just one person last night who used Claude, trained Claude to train 5 different agents to act as 5 different people in, let's say, a marketing agency, each with different departments and different skills, working cross team to help them accomplish. So I'm like, wait a second. So now we're just getting like, talk about amplification and magnification. Now it's one agent training 5 agents, and now you have like 6 agents working for you simultaneously. The perspective that you're getting, and more importantly, the speed at which you're getting to these incredible outputs is like, it's really mind-boggling. It really is mind-boggling, I guess, is really for me,
I
it's
know.
incredible.
It's shocking. And it's just like every single day, like even now, the fact that you can do and direct it from like your phone, if it's set up the right way, like it's really at a speed that is just unhealthy. But I think that the most tragic is not enough people have exposure to what this can be, to what is happening, which also I think brings us back a little bit to like I love sharing with people. Like a lot of people, like it's like, oh, vibe code, you can just code whatever you want, do whatever you want. And like it's just like, yes, you can do it, but how well you understand it, how well you can direct it, how well you can manage it. This is where the real value proposition comes in, but also where it makes or breaks. And I really love these days talking about that, because I think when you see the vulnerability that exists today in people that don't know how to code, I feel it all the time. You begin to realize you're about to make the exact same mistake with AI for an entire generation at scale.
Mm.
It really is. So I really push back against this narrative that we don't know how to code. And if you do, the people who know how to code understand the language of technology. The language of an AI agent is code, HTML, Python, whatever you want to call it. That is their language. And when you don't speak their language, there is a barrier.
Right.
They ultimately will have more control than you if you don't know how to direct and navigate that system. So it blows my mind today that coding was not made a foreign language, and that it was not there's no way anybody can say, well, we had no idea that was coming. You just can't make that argument. It's just not possible. And so, Apple actually, in the opening of their Swift curriculum, have that exact line written. Coding is the language of technology, and everyone should learn it to build and create things that will make a better world. So it's just
That's
very
so
interesting,
smart.
to now experience that myself and see that. So I think it's just so important to tell people how important it is to teach AI skills, but AI skills don't mean I'm sitting and talking to a chatbot.
Right. And to your point, we won't give you a diploma unless you show us that you can solve for the hypotenuse. We won't give you a diploma unless you can make French toast. We won't give you a diploma, right, if you can't do, but we will give you a diploma without you demonstrating that you understand how to use technology.
Yeah, that's so true. That's crazy.
And so, and that's not new. This is 25 years now. We're not, didn't just sneak up on us.
What's your guys' favorite example of what you've seen, or something that like just really like you're like, wow, this is so awesome, this is happening. How do we get more people to see what this person's doing?
Oh, wow.
So should I try to answer this. I've only worked
Go
in
for it.
one district. I'll answer it this way. Mark is he leads this podcast and he recruits all these wonderful people like yourself. And we get very, very inspired by people who are always thinking, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. And I think the problem with most schools is they're 2 or 3 steps behind.
Okay.
And so for me, if you're asking, I can't speak to the technology even like a fraction of how well you could speak to it. What I can speak to is we have to be able to motivate and inspire kids to be curious and passionate. When I see that happening in the classroom, I know things go well, because without getting too deep in the weeds here, the biggest obstacle, I always say, is that we have 43 minutes, 40 minutes, 35 minutes, 50 minutes. So it's very hard to ask teachers to do these unbelievably creative projects with kids when they don't see them. But what we can do is motivate and inspire them to be curious and passionate.
Yeah.
Then they go out and they do the things that you're talking about. They have that foundation. So I wish I could tell you, I love where I work because of the kids, everything, the teachers, but I think a lot of schools are still focused far too much on, we have to prepare them for an assessment.
Yeah.
We have to cover the curriculum, and I can't really fault them yet, but we have to change that mindset. Does that give you a decent answer?
No, 100%, 100%. And I think I see the same thing too. I think I see a lot of people who are like, oh, the system needs to change. This needs to happen. That needs to happen. But also at the same time think that there's a lot of examples out there about how, like, when you actually do engage them in that curiosity and that motivation, you also hit all the other dominoes. It's like a domino effect. But it's so hard for people to believe that until they experience it. But if you never experience it, then you don't believe it. And you think, no, the way you're currently doing it, which also really blows my mind, because it's not even like we're doing well. Like, it would be one thing if everybody's literacy scores and math scores are like an all-time high and people like try to protect the system that works. And it's like, no, we can't do it because we're like on the 90th percentile. But we're like rock bottom. So it's like you have nowhere to go but up.
Right.
And Mark knows I say this all the time. The kids we have now don't have time to wait for the system to get fixed.
Yeah, they really don't.
So we can't just sit back and say one day, because they're not staying in place. They're going to go on to the next grade. So we have to do whatever we can, even though there are obviously obstacles, to give them the best experience possible.
Yeah, totally.
Mark, your example?
Well, I think I can't give a specific example, but when I see it working at its best, it's not when the technology is being used to just acquire information, but when the technology is being used for a student to demonstrate their understanding of something, where they get to have and amplify their voice. For me, technology is a microphone, not an encyclopedia. So that when I see it used that way is when I feel it's being most effective.
I love that. That's so true.
Yeah. And I think we're both optimistic that we are, like, the country is going to figure this out.
Yeah.
in
Because of
terms
people.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's
But
just
the thing is, if it's happening in pockets, and we want to make meaning at scale. That's one of the reasons why we love to have these conversations and share these conversations and use social channels to try to amplify that. We want, like you want, to see these things at scale, because that's when it's going to impact the most people. Otherwise, there's the perpetuation of gatekeeping, the perpetuation of gaps. We've had enough gaps. Like, it's time to close these gaps. This is how they persist if we don't call attention to it and really intentionally design, which is really at the heart of, this is where you live, right? It's at the heart of the designing and the intentionality behind what you're doing. So it's not just sort of happenstance or randomness that you have success, then you can't replicate the success that you have. But for me, and the reason why Nick and I think share very much these same views and why we're so optimistic, because I look at technology as a lever, like the tool itself is a lever. We have the longest lever that we've ever had in history. But if you don't put the fulcrum in the right place and push down on the right place, then you don't maximize the leverage that you have. So if we work smart, think different, to go back to what you said before at Apple, if we're doing those kinds of things with intentionality and with the proper design, then we get to maximize the leverage and our kids get to benefit, which is really the name of the game. And I just want everybody to be kind of on the same page with that.
Yeah. And, to speak to put those two things together, because I think for any educator who's listening, it might be so easy to feel like, well, my district doesn't do this and I don't have access to this and I don't have that. But I just want to say that, like, the best people that I encounter when building these skills and building these AI teams are educators. They learn it like this. Is you have to like, I think we don't realize, like, I always say this, like, I don't think there's anywhere else in any other industry where one person manages 30 plus people. Usually when your team hits 10, you've got another director, you've got another layer of something, another layer of something. I'm going to manage the West Coast, they're going to manage the East Coast. There is nowhere where somebody is managing 5 different teams, say the teacher with 5 different classes, 30 people in each. There is no place in no industry where somebody is managing 5 different teams, each with different needs and in different departments, right? There's no person who's overlooking all of those and also meeting all their needs and doing all these things. So there's a lot of intuitive knowledge that educators have that they don't actually need. This is why when you put them in a room and you just give them a chance to build, they can do it like this with a couple of instructions about what's available to them. The way they take that, I remember when I was doing my research, I was Stacy Lamb at Design 39 who said educators are inherent design thinkers. They're doing it all the time. It's just the name, it's either not named or the naming convention is just a little bit different. And so I think the most exciting thing for me that gets me optimistic is for the first time ever, every single teacher can go out and hire those directors and those teams and all the things they need to fill in those gaps. But how you train them, how you build them, how you do everything, this is what people should dedicate time and space to during, especially now when we know a lot of summer PD and these things are going to start happening for people. This is like, okay, what team are you building? How do we put people together to build this team? Because to your point, those pockets can now be scaled. You can train an AI. I can't take that person and give them to everybody. But I can take that group of people or that person, train an AI, and scale that out to everybody to be able to scale these practices, whether they're in our organization or outside.
So you may appreciate this then, Dr. Kidwai. So this is a post-observation conference I had, maybe it was about a week or week and a half ago. So the teacher is a relatively new teacher, just a few years in, and wonderful, great energy, very passionate, very energetic, having some difficulty with questioning, which is not a very uncommon, stumbling block when you're first starting out. So I built an agent for him. So when he already finds great resources. Now he could drop the resource into the agent and the agent will then create suggestions. Doesn't have to use them. He can edit them however he wants. But if I just gave him questions for the one lesson that I saw, I'm giving him a fish, right? I want to teach him how to fish. The agent is sort of helping both of us, helping me help him become a better angler for himself. So I just that was, but I'm learning these things on the fly because my brain wants to go there, and I'm pushing through and trying to figure out what does this look like for me in my role right now, and how is it different than it's ever been. And I'm taking some chances and knowing that I'm going to be wrong, but I have the humility to be able to try something, be wrong, and say, okay, well, I got it wrong. Now, how can we make it better and iterate off of it? I don't take that as defeat. I just take that as like the first version of something.
100%. I don't, yeah, it's not even about getting it wrong. It's just like, oh, like this is this first version. How do we keep refining it as we go? And I think there are some people who could listen to that and be like, well, then how is he ever going to learn? Right? Because it's the same argument with like children. But I think, again, it goes back to the design of the journey. If you're coming back, what worked? What didn't work? What would you change? What would you do? This to me is a really big opportunity. It is, I now say it's impossible to teach everybody how to use these tools well. It's if you're still in a 2023, 2024 mindset to step into 2026 AI tools and think that you can just hop on and be okay, it's going to be very challenging for you. It's not impossible, but if you couldn't dedicate that time before, I don't know how you're going to dedicate that time now when it's where it is. But what we can do is backwards do it now. Now you can, like, exactly what you're doing. You can now make these agents for whoever's able to, give them to people and let them be like, I like this, I don't like this. Okay, now I want to go in and now I want to do this. And now you've got that ownership, motivation, agency involved, where then they will reverse engineering learning or whatever, I guess, in some ways. But I think that's the fastest and most effective way today to get it done at scale. So yeah, it's a great example.
You've both sold me. So should I go for the $20 version or the $100 version for Claude?
Start with 20 and see. It's really when you get to co-work and you start building skills, it will tell you you've hit a limit. Probably within about 30 to 45 minutes, depending upon how much you're doing. And I think if you reach that limit more than 3 to 4 times, it's going to be hard to keep the system going at the scale you want it to, I think, without going up.
Okay.
That may have happened to me this weekend, potentially, theoretically. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely not cheap to experiment like this.
No, it's not, but it's worth it. Dr. Kidwai, will you promise to please come back when we both become better at Claude, and then we can continue our conversation. Because I mean, we
Absolutely.
could talk to you forever, but we've already taken an hour of your time, and I feel so like blessed, but it's terrible that we are still deep into this conversation. But promise to come back, and we can continue the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you
So,
very
if
much.
where can our listeners find you on the web and on social media?
Yeah, I always say I feel like it's easier to go to designingschools.org, and we're on like every channel from podcast to YouTube to Instagram to LinkedIn. So you can just choose whichever one you like best.
Dr. Sabba Quidwai, extraordinary, did not disappoint. We had such high expectations, and you exceeded all of them. And really just a treat for us today to have this conversation with you.
For me too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.